Okay, so we just want to welcome everyone here once again. Now, one of the things, of course, we always talk about, we have a worship, and people sometimes wonder why we worship for so long, right? And you see, the thing about worship in the past, if you go to the old season church, they'll be like, we come to sing, we come to do worship so that people are ready to hear the word of the Lord. But actually, worship and the teaching are two separate things, because when you worship, there is an opportunity to encounter God, and He is going to cause certain things to happen. So I'm really glad with all the prophetic words, all the decrees, all the things that Judah is doing, is very much aligned with what we want to do today. And I'm continuing on the series, Building the House of the Lord in the Seven Mountain. We haven't done this for over a month already. But then we come into the all-important family mountain. Everyone says family. So today, even here, some of you have family members around, right? And family is something we don't really need to teach. You understand what family is. But then the enemy has really come to capture the family mountain. And that's why, after I was just preparing this teaching, I realized that so many root issues, so many problems that we are seeing in society today, it starts from the erosion of the family mountain. It starts off when we didn't defend the family mountain. So interestingly, the church always say that we can influence the family, right? So even the program, we have, so many church programs are linked with family, right? You have Sunday school, you have youth, you have even the retirees group, I don't know what you call them these days, So all kind of segments, and yet at the same time, we are losing this family mountain. So we want to quickly talk about this today. It's a huge topic. We cannot cover everything. But I hope that what we can do today is at least let's look at what is the issue and what are some of the things that the Lord can cause you to be part of the solution. Now, before we go there, let's just quickly talk about building the house of the Lord in Seven Mountain. So remember earlier this year, right? Starting from last year, October, we're talking about 6 months. Head of the year 5782 to pass over 6 months. We have been focusing on building the house of the Lord for the future. We look at 5 things, all the different parts. The first thing, of course, is foundation. Everyone says foundation. So in today, we talk about family. Let me just say this to you. Family is really one of the key foundation. When, these days we are like, we don't really look at family line. We don't really look at whether people are able to come together to create a godly line, because people are just based on, people are like, it doesn't matter as long as we have good intentions. But in the past, people always look at the foundation, because when the foundation is not good, everything that we establish cannot stand. So that's why when 2 persons come, if they want to make a covenant, then God can start a new line. So that's an encouraging thing. Okay, we're not saying that we are bound by the bloodline or past, but we have to come to a place where we understand covenant. We'll talk more about that. But when we talk about foundation, we're talking about the core, the non-negotiable aspect of a building project. So when you build a project, what are the things that you cannot live without? So we just done the BGR course, right? We just done the courtship course, right? We always ask people, we encourage people to say, what are the non-negotiable? What are the things that you cannot live without? So it's like if you build a house, by the way, I met someone from one of my, not really my colleague, because my company has so many departments. So one lady from China, she said she never used aircon in her life, not even once. So I'm like, wow! And she said, so it's like, that's her lifestyle, her shop, her house, everything, no aircon. So if that's your non-negotiable, you better find someone that can tahan there, okay? We talk about material. Yeah, I know. I was just like, so we were in a restaurant. I'm like, you're not cold? She said, I'm freezing. And I'm like, so hot, yeah. So today, after we sent the fire zone, I felt so hot. It's like, the aircon is it even on? Then, of course, we talk about material. What are we bringing? Every time, we are in a month of Tammuz, we just celebrated first fruit. Every time we do first fruit, we ask the question, am I bringing the best worship? Are we bringing the best sacrifice and resources? Not just money, but time, emotion, submission, etc., etc. All these things. Then we talk about workmanship, the quality of our expression, the kind of thing, our creativity. And, I don't know, just now during worship, did I hear like, Imperial March or something, from Mark. Is it? Yeah, maybe, right? So I saw you were laughing, but everyone else is like, the rest of the band were very focused on what they were doing, okay? And so there's a quality, there is the unique. David, you heard that? Okay, but you didn't laugh. Okay? You have a very serious face. So it's okay. So for some people, the workmanship is a serious face. It is a proper face. And that's okay. God creates us different. God creates us unique, okay? And then there is that personal touch, the uniqueness. What can we bring to the house? And at the end of the day, everything we built, we use the term robustness. Does it stand the test of time? Does it stand the test of being under pressure? So really just now, I really felt like, we started off the gathering with a lot of prophetic words, really on healing, on the pastoral side, and it's very important because God really wants to heal us for this season. But then very quickly, it will come to the place, what we do, does it stand the test of time? That's always going to be the issue for us, for our family, for our city, for our state, for our country. Okay, so we come into this series, Building the House of the Lord in Seven Mountain, and how is it different? Because now we want to focus on the society. We want to go into what we call, Seven Mountain, I think you all have heard this before, but basically, it's not a doctrine, it's not a theology, but it's a strategy. Everyone says strategy. So it's like a tool, okay? Don't overcomplicate your thinking. It's just something to help us to understand culture molders, okay? So what do we mean by molders? That means we see different society, different parts of society, they have great influence. So today, when we look at so many issues in Malaysia, we can pinpoint, for example, the education system. Education is one of the strongest area that needs reformation because so much of the mindset, the good mindset and the bad mindset, but especially the bad mindset comes from Education Mountain, for example. So these arena have great influence. Now the thing about us, remember, we want to express kingdom, right? We want to disciple nation. That's what Jesus commanded us in Matthew 28 before he ascended into heaven. So if we want to influence culture, that means we want to do something that causes people to be like, hey, what you have is good. So recently we've been talking about so many things, right? I'm sure many of you have heard about the abortion case, and you heard about all the LGBT, all the trans, all the liberal thing. And sometimes you talk to your friends, you really find it very hard because they are like, why are you so bad? It's like, and it's like, then you don't even dare to give your position. But that's the thing. We have to be able to convince them that it's a good thing. Now, I remember years ago when I first started to be exposed to the whole homosexual agenda. In fact, I read one of the book. It's like, did you remember, some of you may be old enough, you know there's a very famous diver in US, Greg Louganis. Anyone knew him? 1984, 1988 Olympic, he did a dive, his head hit the platform. And he had AIDS at that time. And nobody knew. And he went back, he dived again, he got the gold medal. He was considered one of the greatest divers. But anyway, he was a homosexual and he wrote the book. I remember I was very young at that time, maybe Form 1, Form 2. And this kind of thing kind of caused you to be like, hey, it's not such a bad thing. That's the way the enemy tried to influence us. So we had to think in terms of how do we even talk about this in a natural way. So I remember Doris Wagner, Doris Wagner, of course, very, very experienced deliverance minister. She has tons of experience in helping homosexual. And she said, you just have to look at the facts. You have to look at the lifestyle. Homosexual partners, there is no happy ending. Because it's a fact. They change partners all the time and their lives are full of turmoil and things like that. So that's why we can use facts, we can use truth to talk to people. So we don't have to be afraid, but we have to ask the Lord for wisdom so that we are not being judgmental. Unfortunately, when it comes to certain cultural issue, the church can seem like very judgmental. So that's why the way we do it is very important. The gospel of kingdom, what is that? The power and authority obtained by Jesus when he came, he took all those things and then he said, all authority on earth and in heaven I give to you so that you can shift and transform the world. So that is what we're being called to do. So at the end of the day, our goal is really, we want the kingdom of God to be established so that harvest can come in. This is a decade of harvest, and we have definitely a limited time frame to do that. Now, seriously, if you study the timeline, I think we are in that end time. Do you agree we're in end time? You look at the news, look at the signs, look at all the things that is happening, but it's not something to be afraid of because the great harvest is there. The issue is only whether we're going to be part of the assignment or not. So with this thing, we have to understand that there is a great cultural war. See, unless you've been living under a rock, okay, and none of you are living under a rock, you will realize that there is an ongoing cultural war. And this cultural war is being waged by the media. So remember the last chapter, part 2, we did media. And media is just so powerful in terms of setting the tone, in terms of causing us to believe what we want to believe. So this cultural war, why is it significant? Because it will create a separation between what? The sheep and goat faction. Now, very interesting, we talk about goat, right? Goat, of course, biblically is bad. But you know, when you talk about sports, right, goat, you know what is the definition of goat, right? Greatest of all time, right? So if you're, whatever sports, you know, in football, you have the Messi, the Cristiano Ronaldo debate. In basketball, you have LeBron, you have MJ, that kind of thing. But this goat is not that goat, okay? This goat is a goat nation that is going to be condemned into hell. And by the way, do you know that the goat faction can come from the church? And that's one of the things the Lord showed me. And I know the truth has always been there, but we don't really want to confront that. That some people, when the line is drawn, they are on the goat side. It's very, very scary. The gospel of kingdom is therefore a mandate, a command, an assignment to shift culture. Because everything happens on earth, there are only two possibilities. Either it glorifies God in heaven, we worship something, and then, or it glorifies Satan in hell. So nothing is more evident than the recent overturning of the abortion case in United States. You either support it, or you either you support no abortion, or you support abortion. There is no middle ground. There is no middle ground. That's why this line is being drawn between Reformed ecclesia. Okay, we're not talking about the Reformed church in the 16th century. Okay, we're talking about a true reformation of the church. And then there will be the falling away of believers. Is in the Bible. The book of Hebrews talk about some believers will fall away. So hopefully nobody that we know is in that area. So we talk about the pay decade. It's a decade of harvest, but it is also a decade of choices. Everyone say choices. Look at your neighbor and say choices. You have choices here today. And when we think about Family Mountain, we have choices. We have choices. First of all, who we marry. Then after if you're married, okay, you're stuck, okay? You cannot undo that marriage. Then you have choices how you live out that marriage. Then you have children. You have choices how you deal with the children. At all stages, you have choices. But it's like so many people don't want to make the choices, or they make the choices that glorifies Satan in hell. We need to make our lives count in this season, the 10-year decade. Okay, so we talk about the 7 mountain. Which area are you in? So I know some of you are more passionate in certain areas. Some are like in education, some are in government. But let me just say this, I believe family is for everyone. Everyone has a degree of involvement in family. But now, some of you will have great assignment. It could be your primary assignment. But if that's not you, there are still, I believe, a few people that you are able to touch, you are able to influence that will cause them to either be on a goat or sheep faction. Okay, let's talk about family. So what is a family? Okay, I'm not teaching sociology now, okay? Remember in science, you used to study, right, with the primary family, the secondary family. By the way, do you know all those things are being changed now? They say, oh, the family, many definitions, they try to define marriage, they try to define family, but we're not getting there today. But we all have a natural understanding of family, right? Because we are part of family. All of us have positive experience. All of us have negative experience in family. True? So that some of you, your whole family are here, so you're looking around. But that's true. We don't feel very awkward because the bad things are what to do. It happened, right? So, but let's look at family from God's perspective, okay? The first thing to understand is it is an institution created by God. how do you have family? Look at the first family on earth. You have Adam, you have Eve, then you have who? Cain and Abel, right? So it's like, Cain and Abel, how did they come about? Did God create them? No. Family comes as a result of marriage covenant as instituted by the Lord. Now, I want to say this, that in a family, the husband and wife's covenant is more important than their obligation to the children. Now, I said this a few times already, but we need to understand this because there are parents who worship their children. There are parents who give everything to their children and neglect the covenant. But do not forget, the family comes from the covenant. Without the covenant, there's no family. Now, here's another very important thing. Because of bloodline, family is a place where we get either the blessing, the good things, all the good things, or we get the curses, all the bad things. Because the moment you are born, do you realize that all the good things, all the sin, all the bloodline issue immediately transfer to you? Do you realize that? It's true. It's not a joke or anything like that. So that's the thing. So that's why it becomes a very important place. So when we have broken covenants of marriage, when the covenant breaks, then it becomes an open door to all sorts of trauma. Adultery, addictions, abuse, abandonment, we call this the 4 big A, okay? So that's why the courses that we're doing the next few weeks, this month, next month, and in between, we talk about the father heart. Father heart, of course, is always so important because it's one of the big root issue behind everything that we're seeing today. Then fear of the Lord, because on one hand, people say, oh yeah, we can have the grace, then there's no fear. So the fear of the Lord is needed to balance. Then in between, we're doing a time to be set free. So all these things, I believe, will be very, very important. We all need to come, but you also know that there are some people who should be here, and do invite them, okay? So when the covenant is broken, suddenly the floodgate is there. Now let's look at one scripture here, and you know this, right? Joshua, at the end of his campaign, and he was retiring. Actually, he was not retiring. He was going to die already, okay? Because he completed his assignment. And this was like his final word. And he said, Joshua 23, verses 14 to 15. Now, therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and truth. And put away the gods which your fathers served beyond the river in Egypt. Talk about our history, okay? And serve the Lord. See, the choices, you worship Egyptian God or you choose to worship Jehovah. If it is disagreeable in your sight to serve the Lord, you see, he gave them choices. If you don't want, if you find it offensive to worship God, don't do it. Yeah, I know some of you find it funny, but that will be the way I teach people. You don't do it, don't do it. You ask my children, they hear that from me all the time. You don't want to do it, then just go somewhere. Don't talk to me. Yeah. Because sometimes like that, you have to give them choices, but of course it's like you have to guide them and things like that. But at some point, after enough guiding, what happens? Choose lah. Just make a decision. So choose for yourselves today whom you will serve. Whether the gods which your fathers served, which were beyond the river. Do you realize he was repeating the whole thing? He said twice. In the Bible, if a main point is repeated twice, it means it's very important. Or the gods of the Amorites in which land you are serving. But here's the thing, and he declared, but as for me and my house, my household, we will serve the Lord. So he made the choices. Joshua reminded Israel the choices they must make because the choices will affect their families. So remember the whole book of Deuteronomy talks about all the choices. If you do this, all the good things, then the blessing will come, the blessing will come, the blessing will come. If you do all the bad things, then the curses will come, curses will come. So God already outlined it. You either choose God or you choose the devil. And I feel like we're in the season where this is becoming more obvious and God is going to make it clear. And in fact, I would say God will make it easy now. Easy not in the sense of emotional easiness, but in the sense of it's very obvious. You can't really choose wrongly. But very often we choose wrongly because of our emotion. We don't want to let go of certain things. Okay, so let's talk about Family Mountain. The Family Mountain I already mentioned, supposed to be one of the mountains where the ecclesia, the church, traditionally they say, oh, we have a strong foothold, we have strong influence. But the last few decades, we have seen the erosion. Why? A few things happened worldwide. Of course, the first thing is the faith is taken out from family. It's taken out from schools. It's taken out from the community. So those kind of things happen slowly. And that's why right now we are living in a time of unprecedented breakdown in family structure. I think you all know somebody, right? They have family issue, they have divorce issue. We all know that. I mean, we just throw a stone, it is there. In fact, when you talk to counselors, in the faith-based counseling or even the non-faith counseling, it's the same thing. They will say, broken homes, main contributors to all these things, drug use, illegal sexual activity, unemployment, poverty, imprisonment, violent acts, etc., etc. So that's why remember what Joshua said. When people do not heed the advice, choose this day whom you shall follow, God's way or devil's way. And we see that this is a foundational issue. That's why in Psalm 11:3 it says, if the foundations are destroyed, what can the righteous do? Do you realize what the verse is saying? If we don't deal with the foundational issue, no matter how righteous you are not able to solve it. So that's why you heard this before. You heard Apostle Michelle say this before, that we know some apostles in US, they will say, if someone doesn't give their tithe, they will not do deliverance on them. Because they say, I cannot remove your curses. I can't. And I know if this is the first time you hear this, you'll be like, wow, so judgmental, so shocking. But this is what the word of God says, that if you don't give tithe, you are putting a curse on yourself. No human can take it away. So that's the thing. We're talking about a foundation that is being destroyed. So why is a cracked foundation? So I mean, just ask anyone around you. We talk about problems in family mountain. I think we all can provide a long list because we all are kind of like quite an expert, right? We all have personal experience, right? So even those relatively good family, you can still list down maybe half a page or something. Because it's true. And you see, the thing is this. Family, like every other cultural mountain, okay, we talked about media already 1 month ago, but all the mountains are the same. We have been deeply affected by the current value of culture. See, this is one of the things when I was young, I really remember this, maybe primary school we start to hear about the homosexual kind of thing, because people will talk about this. And I remember some of the older people will be like, oh, this is just a trend, young people, they want to do it, let it be. By the way, do you know that one of the trend now is really for young female girls, I'm talking about teenage girls to go into homosexuality. That's the trend now. And the trend is they do it, and then the boys will be like, oh, that's okay. They're even supporting it. So this is due to what they see in the TV, what they read in the news, and say, hey, everyone is doing that, it's very acceptable. So we have been affected by the culture. You see, a dominant culture is not necessarily a superior and blessed culture. And this is one of the things we have to be very, very careful when we deal with the liberal culture. Because, you see, what the liberal is promising what? Freedom, right? Freedom. You go to Woodstock, right? So some of you don't know Woodstock, you're too young for that. But, the free sex movement, they are like, free. In fact, it's not only free sex, it's free drugs also. So when those things mess together, and rock and roll, see, rock and roll is the glue, okay? Yeah. And you talk to some of the oldie rock and roll star, right? And you ask them, oh, and many of them will say, oh, when I wrote this song, I think I was very high, I was on drug. Literally inspire, demonic inspiration, you can even say, hey, and those are good entertainment. So that's why, just because a culture is dominant doesn't mean it's a good thing. And so when we talk about the cracked foundation, and this is where I want to shift into for the rest of today, is really, in recent time, there is a trend, there is a strong movement to move away from marriage covenant. Now, what do I mean by that? Because, by the way, the youth church are doing LGBT today. And very funny, yesterday, I think 10 p.m., I was just talking to Lanshi. She said, hey, you're doing that, right? Huh? I'm doing that. So anyway, then she had to prepare. They were just, yeah, seriously. So she's down there now. So we're just kind of discussing, and then she kind of just, we always talk about what we do, that kind of thing. And it's, the gay agenda and things like that. But I've been doing this research also, and very interesting. I just find that from the family mountain point of view, all the things about abortion, all the things about free sex, LGBT, all those things, those are really the symptom. Those are the manifestation of the root issue. And the root issue is we have moved away from covenant. And I'm going to try to show you that, okay? Because here's the thing about covenant. If we don't understand covenant, we can't know the heart of God. That's why even today we are prophesying about the destiny of the land, right? You see, what's happening in Malaysia, for example, is an issue of covenant. Some covenant has been broken. But how do we restore that? That's really the question. So, what do we mean by covenant? Okay, so let me do a bit of legal teaching for you now. Very quickly, one-page summary. Now, a lot of people think covenant is contract, but it's not contract, okay? It's very, very different. Because covenant, if you think from God's perspective, is unilateral, okay? I know some people, these are big words, very burning like that. Unilateral basically means one side decide. So do you realize that every time in the Bible is God reaching out to man, right? After Adam had sinned, what did God do? Adam, where are you? Oh, it's not very convenient to see you now. So sometimes you're in the house, right? Someone ding dong. Oh, it's not very convenient now. I'm showering, I'm changing, or I lost my towel, whatever. I don't know if any of you ever gave that kind of lame excuses. But basically, that's what Adam said, right? It's not convenient. Why do you know it's not convenient? Did someone tell you? But anyway, so it's unilateral because God is the one reaching out. Covenant, irrevocable, indissoluble. Okay, all this thing, tongue twisting. But basically, cannot cancel. You cannot cancel it. So some of you, if you take some services, you sign up broadband, you better read carefully, okay? So very often you can't cancel it for 1 year or 2 years. So, but this one is forever. You can't do it until death. Because one of the greatest examples of covenant is really God and Abraham. And when Abraham agreed, and God said, go and cut some animals, put the animal and the blood on the land, and then God came and burned the thing. So it's like he consumed the sacrifice to kind of seal the deal. So you know what happens now? God and Adam had a covenant, and that covenant is forever. Do you know why it's forever? Because although Abraham died, Isaac died, Jacob died, all the descendants died, God never died, right? So that's why today the covenant with Abraham still stands. That is why we have all the blessings. So unfortunately, during Reformations, people like Luther, people like Calvin, they kind of say, oh, no, the church is a new entity. We have nothing to do with Abraham. But when you read the book of Hebrews, when you read the book of James, when you read the book of Galatians, it's just inconsistent. Anyway, we're not going into that, okay? Another thing about covenant, it does not depend on the performance of either party. Now, this is really mind-blowing because when we teach marriage events, we say, you know what we say? We say, it's okay to have some expectation, right? Is it okay to have expectation? Some of you getting married real soon. You better get this right? So is it okay to have expectation? It's not a trick question. Yes, of course, yes. You have choice. But after you are married, you have no choice, okay? And very important. So you can do all the due diligence now. You can do all the, okay, maybe it's too serious, right? You can do all the research. How to research? It's like, you get a feel and you do it. But here's the thing about covenant, and this is really the mind-blowing part of it. It does not depend on the performance. That means if one party, after you have covenant, decided not to do anything, you're stuck. You're stuck. That's why do you realize one of the marriage vow, for better or for the worse? Till death do us part. Okay, I'm just preparing you all for marriage, okay? Seriously, I tell you, covenant is one of the things that will cause you to have to compromise the most. You have to die to self all the time. But here's the thing. When you have covenant, the strength and the blessing and the power that comes from that, it kind of causes the sacrifices and limitations to be quite bearable. Okay? So it's a trade-off. Covenant is represented throughout the Bible. So one of the things about it doesn't depend on performance, and I think this is a verse that a lot of people quote, Hebrews 13:5, talking about Jesus himself saying, I will never desert you, nor will I forsake you. Of course, people use this to present the understanding of once saved, forever saved. But you see, Jesus said, I will not leave you, but he did not say, you cannot leave me. Because when Hebrews talk about the great falling away, he's talking about believers experiencing the goodness of God but still chose to live. Some would do that, not all. In fact, a small majority, but because the Word of God says that, we have to acknowledge it can be true. But if you think about this and you're like, oh, am I really that category of people? My heart is so hardened. If you even think about that, then your heart is not so hardened. People whose heart are hardened, they won't even think about that. And that's what sometimes, and Lanshi and I, sometimes we do that. We cannot judge people. We cannot say whether they will go to heaven or they'll go to hell. But sometimes you get a feel, and you just get a feel that they are living their life as if you cannot reach out to them anymore. There are people like that. And what can we do? We have to continue to pray. We have to continue to see that there's an opening that will cause the Spirit of God to touch them. That's all. We can't do nothing already. So that's the thing. Jesus promised that. And that's despite the fact, the bride of Christ, that's us, right? We did not fulfill God's command. Did we fulfill God's command all the time? No. So often the church didn't fulfill what is needed, right? But Jesus continues to love unconditionally. So marriage, that's why marriage, here's the ideal of marriage. Here's the goal of marriage, is to reflect that level of covenant, commitment, and faithfulness. That's the ideal. So remember, if you read the book of Hosea, remember the prophet Hosea? The wife became a prostitute, and God said, you have to remain with her. So that's why, I know some of you is like, your eyes are bigger. Because Apostle Paul say, adultery is a reason for divorce, right? But you see, when Jesus talked about it, he was like, that's the law of Moses, but it is because your hearts are hardened. See, fundamentally, Jesus and God, they do not want divorce. Because if they subscribe to that, they will abandon us already, right? The church has not been fulfilling, and they'll just say, okay, let's create another set of humans. Oh, that'll be pretty bad, okay? So it's like, but anyway, that's going to the sci-fi level, okay? Come back. So let's talk about the covenant again, because today, marriage is lived out not as covenant, but as contract. So how does it happen? See, when things get too tough, one or both sides will attempt to abandon this covenant. Okay, let's do our own thing. And sometimes it's like, recently I just heard my father-in-law say, he knows someone in his family, they're living together even have children, but the husband and wife have not spoken to each other for 15 years. Under the same roof. I'm like, well, how can that even happen? And how can you even tahan, right? So it's like this kind of crazy kind of thing. Because when things get tough, people do all kinds of things to protect themselves. Many couples will readily give in. They will choose the option of divorce. They don't even think about the consequences, okay? So remember, God hates divorce. And I'm going to repeat this. I said this already, but it's worth repeating. This breaking of covenant, the breaking of the institution, is the source of the major breakdowns in families today. So that's why we can talk about the sexual revolution, we can talk about the gay agenda, we can talk about abortion. All those are the fruit of this root issue. So when the covenant is broken, we allowed this 4BA. The 4BA, you can try to remember. Adultery, of course, adultery is the beginning of divorce, the spirit of adultery. Addictions, abuse, abandonment. So many times we talk to people, right? When we do deliverance, it's always a few issues, right? It's always some kind of trauma, some kind of rejection. Always the same. Whatever they do, whether they are addicted to pornography, they're addicted to alcohol, whatever, it is just a symptom of a greater root issue. And the root issue can be traced back to the breaking of covenant. So when that happens, what do we see? When we have this kind of cracked foundation, we start to see divorce, we start to see adultery, the spirit, we start to see gender confusion. That's happening, right? So the past 10, 15 years, we have seen a lot of homosexual, LGBT, but now, of course, transgenderism is really coming in. And this is, actually to me, is a good development. Do you know why? If you study trans, you know what is the whole argument for trans? In fact, they're talking about it downstairs, okay? Transgender is really like this, that if you feel like you are an opposite sex today, you can change. So you're male today, I feel like I'm female, so I can go to female toilet, I can go to female changing room. That's the way they justify trans. But the trans actually is a slap to lesbian and gay. Do you know why? Because the whole gay and lesbian movement, they started off by saying that it's a gene. It's a predisposition. I'm born with that. So how can you be born with that and then all of a sudden you can change? So now they're having this confusion, they're having this kind of fighting, okay? But I don't know how they're going to resolve this. They're probably just going to, do an ostrich thing. You know what is ostrich? Just put a head. So in fact, the media is doing that. Every time people point out, hey, you are not consistent. You know what the media do? They become like ostrich. Can't hear you, didn't hear you, don't want to hear you. But see, people are getting smarter because you cannot keep deceiving people. So this is what's happening now. There's gender confusion, but I believe the truth will set people free. Then, of course, we go into same-sex marriage, redefining of marriage. Now, why this is important? You see, I don't really care what two people do. They want to have sex, they want to go holiday, that's fine. But you see, the consequences is the parenting. Homosexual, lesbian, gay couple want to raise up children. It's like, how do you have children? You need a man and woman to come together. I mean, this is biology 101, right? You don't want to go through the basic biology and yet you want to be a parent. See, the fight for this is not really the marriage, is for the children. Because we have to protect this. We have to protect children from unsuitable parenting. Then, of course, all these things, what is powering it is the abortion. Because abortion is the shedding of the blood of innocent. It's a worship. Since the day of the Tower of Babel, it has been around. And somehow, it became the stronghold of Canaan land. And then Israel got ensnared. And they were like so... I mean, you think about it, it's like so unnatural, right? I mean, it's so evil to sacrifice children, but yet, because it's a form of worship, people just buy into that. So that's why the recent Dobbs case, I'm going to talk about that a bit later, just kind of caused everyone to manifest really, really gao. You talk to people and they'll be like, oh, why can't people have abortion and things like that? So I think it's good to have a conversation. You should find someone, you should find some of your very liberal friend and just have a conversation. We're not trying to debate or win, but we're trying to see what is your point of view, that kind of thing. Anyway, now the thing about abortion, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because it relates to Family Mountain, is this: Satan wants to kill you. So we know this, right? John 10:10, one of the most famous verse, the thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So it's very interesting that when we talk about killing, what is the opposite of killing? The opposite of killing is life abundantly. So in the context of the abortion debate, I think such a contrast, right? One wants to kill, and their argument is, the original Roe v. Wade, the original case, is really talking about 14th Amendment, the right of privacy. Can you imagine? What kind of legal argument is it? It's just so ridiculous. But then, of course, later on, the Supreme Court justices, they realize how stupid they are. So 20 years later, in the next case, they try to throw that away, but still give the right to have abortion. So we can see the contrast here. But these things happen even in the Bible. Do you realize that? When God tried to raise up someone like Moses, Pharaoh killed all the children, right? When Jesus came down as human, Herod tried to kill him, kill all the children. Then, of course, even Joseph, when he was young, the brothers tried to kill him. See, the enemy always uses people to try to kill you first, because he wants to create an altar of worship for himself. That's why Canaan religion, the whole place, after Joshua, they all went into, and he was telling them, be very, very, very careful. And after a few years, they all bought into the child sacrifice. Child sacrifice is a religion of Baal, Ashtoreth. And that caused Israel to be eventually exiled. Very serious. So Satan will always try to kill you first, but if he cannot kill you, he will then inflict heavy wound on your spirit, on your soul. Now, if you do inner healing, and I know many of you have experienced, you will know what they say about inner healing, right? They'll say that 95% of all the trauma you had most likely happened before the age of 12. Most likely. So that's why sometimes when we do deliverance, and some people will be like, I can't remember my childhood. And I know some people say, I cannot remember anything below age 15. That's very serious, okay? Some people cannot remember anything below age 12. That means a trauma has entered in. So that's why if the enemy cannot kill you, he will cause all these things. And now we have this triple course, right? The father's heart, fear of the Lord, and then a time to be set free. Just in this time frame, I really feel like the Lord wants us in this month of Tammuz and then after next month to really take care of everything so that we can advance into the next season, okay? So do consider very seriously that we ourselves need to come because we haven't had this on site for almost 2 years already. And there are many, many people out there who can use this. Now, we want to just mention one story. I read this in Osthuman Change Agent. By the way, my entire series, this teaching is based on Osthuman Change Agent, the book, the orange book. I don't know if you still have any copies. A great, great book. If you are a marketplace person, you really need to buy the book and read it. But in his book, he talked about the story of this guy, Tim Tebow. You know, ever heard this guy? Well, he was an outstanding American football guy. Great in college. Unfortunately, he didn't make it in the professional. Okay, was he from Iowa? No. I thought he was from Iowa. But anyway, he was a great college player, and he won the Heisman Trophy. The Heisman Trophy is basically MVP at college level. Okay, very, very important. So he became so famous, and in fact, he is one of the most marketable athletes because he is like a role model for Christians. You see, this is an example. Do not think that if you try to be good, you cannot sell. Because that's what they try to tell us in the entertainment mountain, right? You bring your Christian value, you want to wear proper clothing, not exposing your body part, it won't sell. That's a lie. I tell you, there is a market, and Tim Tebow is a great example. He is one of the most marketable athletes. Now, what happened, of course, was in 2010, they did a Super Bowl commercial, and it was sponsored by Focus on Family. You know, Focus on Family, they focus on divorce, abortion, all those things. And they detail about a story. His parents were missionary in Philippines, and when they were pregnant with him, he was the fourth or fifth child, and the doctor said, just abort. But the mother said, no, I don't want to abort. So they just talk about, they share their experience and how, because of the decision, he became a blessing to the family. So can you imagine someone, a pro athlete, come out and say, abortion is bad. I'm here because my mother didn't abort. 2010 was at the height of the abortion debate. The advertisement became the most talked about commercial from that Super Bowl. So both sides, the pro-life and the pro-choice, fighting like crazy. But here's the thing I want to mention. 92 million people watched the ad. And then out of that, another 500,000 people went to Focus on Family website to just check out the testimony, test out the story. See, what we're trying to show you here is that for Family Mountain, sometimes there is that collaboration with other mountain. In this case, the Media Mountain. So you see, you think about Family Mountain, what can we do? By itself, we are focusing on healing the family. But there are times we need to work with people in Parliament to pass the law. We need to work with education. We need to work with teachers, businesses, etc., because the combinations of the mountain can impact culture. Okay, I want to talk about the free sets thing for a while. Now, those of you, if you join our courtship course, Apostle Michelle did mention a little bit about that. But it's important for us to understand how this affects the family, okay? So the free sex revolution really happened in the 60s, in the 70s, and it is known as a sexual revolution. By the way, what's happening is, at that time, you have an entire generation, they were anti-establishment. They were saying, government, you're very bad, you shouldn't go to Vietnam, you shouldn't force us, So you see, a lot of time, revolution starts off with a good intent. They really wanted justice. They really wanted peace. So it's the same thing with French Revolution, right? When they tried to start the revolution, it's because they saw a king, an emperor that was very wasteful. But eventually it became such a bloody thing. So the same thing, you have rock and roll, you have drugs, you have the culture of free love, and they call this liberal living. But you see, what is liberal living essentially is this. It's a pathway to the door of hell. So this is the way. Now, how do you share this without being judgmental? How do you share this without Bible bashing? So that's why there is a strategy, and the strategy is covert. The strategy is use the data. The strategy is you have your own think tank, you have your own experience, you do your own counseling center, etc., etc. That is the way to do it. Because the reality is this, when you have unrestrained sexual liberties, you have more divorce, you have more breaking of families. And when that happens, you start to have the root issue. The root issue is this, one of the major root issue, fathers abandoning their families. So do you realize that recently, actually for a while already, you always see it once in a while, right? You hear reports, right? Oh, there's gun shooting in US. And then the debate starts again. Oh, is the US lawless? They have got a lot of guns and these people are stupid. And you always hear this kind of argument, right? But so few people are willing to talk about the reasons these people took out guns and shoot people. One of the reasons is the fatherless situation in the house. Of course, we can talk about the technical consideration. Do you realize the shooter always target the weak places? I mean, today, if you have guns in Malaysia, where would you go? Pasar Malam? Defenseless. I mean, would you go to Putrajaya? Would you go to Parliament? Would you go to Bukit Aman? It's like so ridiculous, right? I mean, so see, that's the thing. It's not really about the guns. It's not really about the security. But at the end of the day, there is a hard issue that people are not willing to talk about, okay? So the fatherless is going to be a big issue. Now, we don't even have time to talk about this today, but it's going to be one of the most important things. And when you look at the history, and especially, you know the baby boomer generation. Baby boomer are basically like my parents' generation, okay? So baby boomer, now why do they have this fatherless issue is because their fathers are missing. So you see, when your fathers are missing, you tend to parent. So it's not even like your fathers are not there. You can, I heard an old man, he said this before, he talked about his father. He said, my father was always at home, all the time. But afterward, he came back, sit down in front of TV, and he won't talk to you. It's like that. So it's not like the person is dead. It could be the person is just not present. So that's why this inability to father, to be a proper father, is an issue in terms of broken parenthood. But we're not even touching this today, but these are something that we need to consider in days to come. So when you have these free sex, you have this liberal revolution, one thing leads to another. So first with free sex, right? Then casual fornication, right? So this is a technical term, but the more casual term, one night stand. Everyone can understand, right? One night stand. Then, what is the next step? You go to de facto relationship. Now, by the way, when I first heard this, I was studying law in Australia, they actually have a de facto relationship act. That means Australian law recognizes a man and woman living together without marriage. They are called de facto. Now, of course, how do you cannot, one night stand doesn't qualify you as de facto, okay? So there's a whole list of things. I think you need to stay together for 3 years, then you become de facto. Something like that. So living together but not in marriage and covenant. So really, de facto relationship is the closest thing to friends with benefit. And in fact, de facto relationship, why they say this is because a lot of children came out from this relationship. So when there's a dispute, what happens to the children? So I can understand where the government is coming from. We need a way to deal with this, okay? Then, of course, the next thing, you have the gay agenda, you have the trans agenda, but all these things are symptoms. All these things are fruits only. What is the root? The root, we always say this, but I want to mention this again. The root is divorce. The root is broken covenant. The root is because of the destruction of the covenant, then you had the absent father, then you had the absent mother. So that's why one of the tipping point of culture is really going to be the definition of marriage, okay? Now I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Now, by the way, do you know that the United States, I think in 2015, the Supreme Court recognized same-sex marriage? Those of you might have heard that case, okay? But I want to talk a little bit about this because recently, of course, you know the Dobbs case, right? DOBBS. Really, they overturned Roe versus Wade. So, Roe versus Wade is a proper pronunciation, but the American likes to short form everything. They just say Roe v. Wade, right? So, if you read the news, do you realize that some news reports say 6-3, some say 5-4? Do you realize what is the difference? The difference is the Chief Justice actually supported the case, but he refused to support the abolishment of Roe v. Wade. So that's why it's a 5-4, okay? But what's interesting now, I'm going to just give you a bit of legal commentary, but it is important in terms of how we approach the family mountain, how we pray and how we intercede. So the most senior justice, the black, the only black man, Justice Clarence Thomas, by the way, he's like the big boss of the conservative wing, okay? So he said, this is what he said. In fact, he said this which the other justices were all not very comfortable, so he has to write his own separate judgment, okay? So he said, the court had in the past used the concept of substantive due process. Now, tell me what you think when you hear this word, substantive due process. It means nothing. Because it is something they say, oh, this is something that we should give due consideration. This is something we should allow. So it's really making something out of the air. Now, which reminds me of a story, okay? When I was young, I heard this. Anyone ever heard the story, the soup stone story? The soup stone story is like this. So there is this guy, very hungry, no food, and he had a pot and a stone. So can you cook something from a pot and a stone? So he put water and put a stone. And he was like, then he saw his neighbor, very rich, and he told the neighbor, well, I'm cooking a very nice soup now, but if you can just add a bit of onion, it will be so much better. So the guy will be like, okay, give you onion. So anyway, one thing leads to another. Onion come, vegetable come, carrot come, meat. So eventually, he cooked a super nice soup, and the neighbor, wow, your stone is so good. Then he said, shall I sell you my stone? Substantive due process. Making bullshit out of nothing. So anyway, this is what Clarence Thomas said, and he was very strong. Because why is this important? He said, because all the cases, including the same-sex marriage case, Obergefell's case in 2015, recognized same-sex. Also a 5-4 decision. Also using the stone soup concept, creating something out of nothing. So he was just saying that, look, if we reject Roe v. Wade, we should do the same. See, now, what I'm trying to say is this. Right now, the issue of same-sex marriage is entering into a new stage of importance, a new stage of warfare. Because here's a question we have to ask, can marriage be defined only as a legal relationship between male and female? Because that caused the covenant to be intact. Chuck Pierce, he always said, the few things that cause the land to be defiled. Of course, one is the shedding of innocent blood, abortion. But another one is breaking of covenant. That's why in Malaysia, we have such a curse. We have one of the biggest covenant breaking in the whole formation of the nation. And it's like, people have no idea how to solve this. But God has a way, and we have to be prepared to hear His solution. But coming back to this, can this really be something that can happen? Because if we live by this standard, the land is not cursed. We reverse many, many things. So I already mentioned, why is this important? Because we are believers, we desire kingdom values, right? We desire kingdom influence. We must continue to push and persuade. So I said many times already, just now prophetic words also say, freedom of religion. Many of us want this, but it's not going to be free. You won't get it without fight. You won't get it without persuading. So that's why it's very important. We have to tell people why covenant is important, why marriage, it is important for male and female. So now you start to see children from homosexual marriage, they came out and they say, my childhood is crap. Of course, crap lah. How can mother and mother or father provide the balanced relationship? So that's the thing that is happening right now. Because when we don't embrace covenant, we basically allowed the spirit of divorce. In fact, it's the spirit of adultery. And this leads to the opening of all the doors from hell. See, what is achieved at family, governmental level? See, that's the thing. We talk about family, right? If family can do that, and family has the change, then the family can affect the government mountain. Because all of a sudden we say, we don't want this law. Because imagine if everyone say, we don't want this law, and if you pass this law, we'll vote you out. The government will be scared. This government, what is the one thing government is scared? They are scared of voters who are smart. Because they will kowtow immediately. This is very important because this could be the kind of factor that cause a nation to be sheep or goat. That's why when I prepare this, I'm just like, wow, family is so important. So many of you have such great role. And you may think, oh, people are going into arts and entertainment, people are going into media. It's like, oh, the showy mountain. But I tell you, family is by far the most important in terms of the foundation. So that's why some of you have great calling, some of you have major calling, some of you, yeah, it's just your own family member, but doesn't matter. We all have a role to play in terms of causing our nation to be sheep or goat. So what sort of impact can a good family achieve in terms of nation building and influencing? Now, some of you have seen this before. I think in our BGR course, even in FIC, we mentioned this. But there's a book called Evicting Demonic Squatters and Breaking Bondages. Noel and Phil Gibson. And compare two families throughout their life. 200 years. I think you all have seen this before in the BGR. You know, the family of Jonathan Edward and Max Jukes, right? So Apostle Michelle kind of summarizes, but it's based on this book. It's a deliverance book, okay? And so it's a study done over a period of 200 years. And basically, what is the difference? What is the starting point? Is this: one accepts and honor covenant, the other reject covenant. So Max Juke, in fact, they found out he didn't even marry his wife. The wife was a prostitute and they just kind of had children and let it be. So the fruits and curses of both families show the importance of godly covenant and value. Very quickly, I just show you, okay? So Jude's married, didn't even marry, just have sex and said, okay, we have children, let's live as a family. By the way, do you realize the first point, if you have a proper covenant, you tend to have more children? 5601394. Be fruitful and multiply. Hey, it's not a trick, okay? It's like if you're in proper covenant, most likely you have more descendants. This is evidence, okay? So look at this. Die in poverty, criminal, cost government 1.25 million in 19th century. I just did a calculation. It's about 20 to 40 million USD today. One family. So look at Jonathan Edward. See, Comptroller of US Treasury. I also had to Google what is that, okay? So that's the thing. Whenever we study a new thing, we study something we're not familiar, we just have to learn lah. Because so many people, we've been hearing, the intercessor, Lyra also get a lot of feedback. Say, oh, the things you're showing is very hard. We don't even understand what you're talking about. Go and learn lah. So that's why Comptroller of US Treasury, I don't know. Google and learn. That's the thing. Today, if you say you don't know and you don't go and find, it's just pure laziness. Okay? So, information is out there. Free information. So, if people can sell you information today, it's like you're selling ice to Eskimo, You know what selling ice to Eskimo? It's like they already have a lot of ice, but they still buy from you. So, that's why those who can package information well, they're earning big bucks today. So that's the thing. Jonathan Edward, because of proper covenant, he had a godly lineage. Now, of course, some people will be like, what if my family is like Max Jukes? It's okay. You start. You potong everything, you start. Right? That's what you learn in A Time to Set Free, right? You potong everything, you start. You become the first generation. Now, of course, you're not going to have the same bloodline as those the family have lived 10 generations of holiness. This is a fact, but it's okay. You can start. And there's no condemnation, okay? One person, from one man, remember that's what we talk about in Acts, right? From one man, God sets the boundary of nations. Okay, finishing already. What can I do to make an impact? So here's a practical part already, okay? So what are some of the things that we can do in terms of making an impact in Family Mountain? Remember the story of Tim Tebow? He and his mother partner with Media Mountain. So here's the question. Is there another mountain that we can work with that will enhance the Family Mountain? So it could be business mountain, bringing the money to help families. It could be governmental mountain with laws that are friendly to families. It could be media, because media has too many bad news, right? We really need media who are willing to come out with good news. So another thing, this one we didn't talk about, but it's an important thing to consider. One of the breakdown of family is the failure of husband to meet the emotional needs of the wife. Now, some people will be like, oh, why are you not talking about the wife? Why are you talking about the husband only? Actually, it's both, okay? So it's like there's a whole cycle of love and respect that husband and wife need. But you know why we talk about husband is because husband, you are supposed to lead. When a family is in that kind of cycle, you are supposed to stand out to break that cycle. If you sit there and say, my wife's fault also, I'm going to wait. Okay, you will wait until fill in the whole blanks, okay? So it's like, so that's why this is a word to the husbands or husbands to be, that you are supposed to play the leadership role in terms of the emotional health of the family. So don't be equally stubborn. Okay? You know, some married couple, you know, they're very stubborn. I'm waiting for you, that kind of thing. So some of you have been counseling family, you know lah. So if you're a counselor, what you do, just give a kick in the butt and ask the husband, do something first. Of course, wife can do it also. No problem. But when the scriptures say, husband, lead your wife, this is what it means. Then we talk about the big 4A, right? Adultery, addictions, abandonment, abuse. Which are the area that you have a passion? Which are the area you feel like you can help? Because some of you, maybe you have gone through yourself. Maybe you just have that passion. Maybe you have the gift. So deliverance, inner healing, teaching, equipping, counseling. Are we providing children with both the love of father and mother? So this is where we begin to see if there's an absent mother, if there's an absent father. By the way, do you know the father-heart issue? Father-heart issue can have two roots, okay? One is the absent father, but another issue which not many people talk about is the dominant mother. Dominant mother. Dominant mother comes from where? Comes from absent father. When fathers are absent, then the wife felt like she needed a replacement. That's why the children becomes a target. So these are things that we don't really talk about. But the conclusion is a child needs both the love of the father and the mother. Okay, some more. Of course, build strong marriages, we already talked about. So all the thing, you know, some of you have really passion to help people to have courtship. You know, some of us here, you know, we say that the very kepo gang, but it's not kepo gang. It's really, you have a passion, you have an interest to help people to come together. Courtship, married, and then subsequent marriage life. Hey, it's good to have people to want to help you. Right? Then, of course, we need to invest strategies, resources to heal and restore marriages. Why? Because remember, once in, you cannot come out. So you have to help people to... So really, I remember many years ago, one of the counselor who came, I was at School of Arts, I think, and this guy was like, he's teaching marriage counseling. And his first sentence is, well, you know, 40 years ago, every day, my hands is at the throat of my wife and hers on my throat. Want to kill each other all the time. So he started off the training like that. And then he said, look, it's very important that if people really have an understanding it's covenant, then nothing cannot be restored. That is very important. Then when we talk about destruction of family, it is often because people do not fight. So that's why are we teaching our family what it means to move together, how to war together. So this is an aspect that is very, very important. They need to understand that children need to understand they can affect the atmosphere, that they can do declarations. And whoever is weak, the stronger one can cover for each other. Then are you called to train and equip others in the raising out of strong families? So some of you just have this kind of passion, this kind of gifting. Really, Family Mountain is for you. Okay, I'm going to finish off already, last slide. And this is, every teaching on Seven Mountain, we want to ask this question. What would success look like, right? So really, when I do this, I really feel like this is such a foundational mountain. If we get this right, so many other problems will be solved. Of course, the most common one, first one will be the divorce rate will go down. So Malaysia, so we're just looking at some statistics, okay? So very strangely, UK only have 15 to 16% of divorce. But then they quickly look at the data and say, oh, why no divorce? Because they're living together without marriage. So if you don't register your marriage, there's no divorce. They're already in de facto. So most Western nation, this is the statistic, okay? Western civilization. First marriage, divorce rate 50%. Second marriage, 60%. Third marriage, 70%. That means the more you marry, the more likely you will divorce. Yeah, because you treat it like just changing clothes and things like that. So that's why if we really teach covenant, people understand what it means, divorce will go down. Less dysfunctional and abnormal sexual behaviors and manifestation, because when you have the father and mother, today most of people, we're not talking about those who push the homosexual agenda, talking about the counseling people from faith-based and even non-faith-based, they will say that very often why there is a tendency to look for this kind of illegal sexual activity is really because there is an absent father. That's one of the key points. Less politicization of gay marriage and other societal issues affecting family. Now, this is one of the things that I really kind of blow my mind up is like this, that when we have all the fight about the gay marriage, we have all the fight about LGBT, do you realize that if families are strong and healthy, these things will not affect them? If the families are so strong, and then you say, oh, we want gender fluid, people will just reject because their families are so strong. See, the reason why this agenda are moving strong is because the families are broken already. They are easy target. So if we fix the family, it's like you imagine, we say, oh, there's a lot of wild animal, there's a lot of crocodile here, but if you don't have swamp places, your place is clean, you have walls, you have concrete, the crocodile will not come. That's the thing. Then, of course, it leads to another thing. Mother will value unborn children, reducing abortion. See, all these things is a cycle kind of thing that empowers sin after another. But if we strengthen family, all these things will go down. And on and on. More love, more nurturing, less abandonment, reduction of 4BA, teenage pregnancy. All these are the symptom, the fruits. But we need to deal with the root issue, restoring the proper covenant of God. Crime reduction, better school result. So that's why, but of course, better school result is very subjective, because it's very easy to change school result. Right? I mean, you all know that. I mean, my parents, their entire generation are in education. We know how they manipulate the marks, okay? If this year we need 80% passing rate, bring the graph down. 80% will pass. So my mom was a national marker for PMR those days, and she said at one time, passing mark for English is 20 points. What can you do about it? You can't. But anyway, so don't be too hard on result, okay? Results are good, by the way. I'm not saying it's bad, but I'm just saying that all these things are the bonus. Many, many more blessings. So really, I think God is kind of touching the heart of the issue. And the heart of the issue is covenant. Because he started off with the covenant with Adam. Adam kind of didn't do well, and then the whole earth was in turmoil. Jesus came back to what? Yes, give us salvation, give us a better life, give us a life more abundant, but also the restoration of covenant. That's why today, I don't know what's your situation, I don't know what's your family situation. If you are in covenant, know that no matter what happens, God can restore it. So Lord, I just pray right now that you cause an understanding and awareness of what needs to be done at the family mountain. Lord, I pray right now that you cause us today to really understand the power of covenant, to really understand why you hate divorce. And right now, I just pray, I declare, and I believe that the Lord is saying that I want a restoration of covenant among my people first. And then I'm going to cause a restoration of covenant even between the races in this land. And I'm going to cause the broken covenants of the formation of this land. It's all linked, says the Lord. That what we are seeing right now is because of the broken covenant that comes into the land. But if we begin to restore families, the Lord say, the nation can become a sheep nation in the days to come. So we declare all this. We believe it will happen in our generation. Amen. All right, so we're done for today, and I think the announcement will be 1 p.m. So you have 1 hour, have a break and things like that. 1 p.m. mentoring. Yeah, mentoring here, right? Joyce, is it here? Okay, here. All right, so cafe is operating. Please come and do that. So if you're new here today, please let us know. We want to give you some free drinks, okay?